artist's work, which you can see on the website and things, and a lot of the artists use like really vivid colors and do a lot of blending and things like that. So that's why we chose those artists to work from. So I'm going to show you that in a second again, just because a few of you are away, so I'll show you that picture again. Hopefully my camera's on. I think it is. But I'll show you that in a few seconds. So last week I was drawing a biro picture of a bunch of fish, and I was inspired by a few different paintings of fish, and I've kind of mixed up some of those ideas in the picture that I've been working on. Well, I was working on it last week, but now I've been painting it as well. So I'm going to show you that first of all, and then we'll carry on. So I'll go straight over to my desk. Yay, it's on. That's excellent. Last week I had a few problems with the camera, didn't I? So I'm glad. I think I've fixed it now. But you never know with this lot. So this was what I was doing before, for the benefit of those people who've missed a couple of lessons. So with the turtle, I'd sketched him out in large scale first of all. So that was the turtle, and I photographed the drawing that I'd done, and then scaled it down a little bit on the computer and lightened it up so that I could paint over the top. So I started off with a wash of colour over the whole thing, and then I began by working into things like the scales and things around here using white paint and the burnt umber and ultramarine mixed together to make a really nice deep colour. So I painted all of this like that, and then some of the things I started to do was add in some glazes or washes of colour over certain areas, like this flipper here, to add some tone. I used quite opaque yellow paint in some of these gaps because I'd seen that on some of the other artworks we've been looking at. So I decided, to sort of bring in some colours perhaps that you wouldn't normally see on the turtle and make it, a bit more contemporary and exciting and things. Over here, this bit took me quite a while. A few weeks ago, I was doing stippling and dots and building up lots of layers of colour. But last week, when I was in the other classes, this area is actually really bumpy and textured, and I'd screwed up bits of bits of tissue paper and wallpaper and things and stuck them down with PVA and then worked back over. So you end up with a bit of contrast between textures on the surface of the picture. So you've got this lovely bumpy rough coral on the bottom, and then the smoothness of the flipper, and then some texture and mark making up here on the shell and on the background to help it all unify and things together. So the artwork that I've been looking at this week and last week a little bit as well are these ones. So there's a few things I really liked about these pictures. So this is the one that I was drawing, and I just decided, because a lot of you know how much I love biros, so I just literally drew all of these fish using a biro pen with cross-hatching marks and so forth. And then this week I've been painting those, using this as a reference, but also looking at, I quite like this, which way it goes, I don't know, I think, yeah, that way. Maybe that way, I don't know. But I like the blockiness of the colours and the painterly sort of effects in here. So I've been looking at that. And the other one, which kind of started me off, was the background has been painted with all these strips of colour which overlap each other and go in different directions. So I've taken that idea and applied it onto the picture that I've been working on today and last week when I was drawing it. So here we go. So you've got your cross-hatched fish, which is what I was doing last week, but as you can see now, I've added quite a bit of colour. I've also been adding some highlights on here, which you can see on the original picture. So if I bring that back in, you can see there's little highlights on the face of the fish just here, and how much they stand out. It's a bit like when we've done mid-tone backgrounds in the past before, and then worked over with the lights and the darks. But because there's so much colour on here, I've had a lot of fun adding in colour on top of the biro. And a lot of the biro, most of the biro on the fish that I painted is now gone, but it doesn't matter because I've actually really found that it's quite effective, because I started off by trying to paint in between the lines and so forth, and then gradually the paint built up and I forgot about that, and was really just getting into the colour and things. So if I zoom in again to the top there, you can see how these fish are coming on, and I'm going to move down this way and paint the other ones. And then this one I did on the bottom, this pinky one as well. You can see the brush strokes kind of overlap. So I was quite loose about it, you know, not worrying too much about it, but continuously looking back at the original fish as a reference. So for the most part, I started with whites and then built in the other colours. Here is a lot of layering, so I very loosely again built up the colours. And then added more, and then as I've added more paint to that, it's become more opaque, which means it's become less see-through. But in some instances, like down here, look, you can see some of the background still comes back through. But to start off with, once I've done the biro drawing, you can see that I've painted these lovely strips of colour across the back to suggest maybe that they're swimming, even though we can see maybe they're ready for lunch actually for somebody. But so this was the next thing that I've been working on. So if you've got to the end of what you've been doing, you could actually start maybe doing a biro drawing from another artist's work, and try to first of all do these washes, thin layers of colour, and then start to individually work on certain areas, building up strong layers of colour. And you'll see me doing that because I'm going to paint a couple more of these fish with you tonight, so you'll see how that works as I do it, and you can ask me questions and things. As far as brushes go, I've used sort of a filbert brush, but later on I've used these smaller round brushes to get into a lot of the detail and do the stippling that you can see around here. A lot of the stippling dots were done in white, and then I've done glazes of colour back over the top to soften some of those white bits down and then leave others in. So here's the other fish that goes with that, and it does look a bit different as well in some places because of the colours that are coming through from the background, which is my little touch on it, I suppose. Okay, so that's what we're working on at the moment. There's plenty of these pictures. In fact, there's this picture that I've been showing you, and the others are all on the website if you wanted to work from one of those this evening. All right, so I hope you're all raring to go. Don't forget that if you're interested in going next week in Raunds from 10 till 12 at Saxon Hall, I'm doing a lino printing session for a couple of hours where you get to cut your own lino design and print your own Christmas cards. So if you're interested in coming along to that, I shall be doing that next week for a one-off sort of extra session before we all go off to our Christmas grottos. All right.
Yuck.
What's that?
Jamie,
yes.
When you do your picture, do you start off with pencil and then do biro? Or have you gone straight with biro?
I have just gone straight for it with the biro. You know, but I feel quite confident about using them. So what I did first of all with this is, and you probably can't see it very clearly on here, to make sure the little fish all went in the right place. There's just a trace of a line across here. So what I did in actual fact is I drew like a very, very faint rectangle in the center of the page where I wanted those fish to go, which is a bit similar, of course, to that. And then I knew where the fish were going to go, so I started off at the top and I worked my way down, getting the shapes in first of all, very lightly with the biro, knowing of course that later on I'll be going over any lines that have, you know, that I've put in that I don't need, so I've cross-hatched over those a bit later on. But yes, I didn't use pencil in this case, but you know, you might feel better about using a pencil knowing for sure that you can remove bits of it later. But I just went for it with the pen, and that was okay. Okay.
Jamie, a question.
Yeah.
Biro painting over it, does it move?
Well, when you no, it's waterproof.
So
Yeah.
any biro is waterproof, is it?
Well, I don't know about any biro, but certainly ones like, you know, your Bic pens like these ones here.
Those, yes, okay.
Yeah, they're really good. They're probably the best ones for ink color as well. Sometimes you get a black biro that is actually it looks more blue.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank you.
it's a very dark blue, but it looks more blue in the end.
I'll have a go.
Yeah, it's good. It's good fun. Do you remember me doing it last week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you did it with the leaves, didn't you, when you first started?
Probably. Yeah, I can't remember now. I've done biros quite a few times now, haven't I? So.
Yeah.
But
so this is week 1 of 2 weeks of drawing on these particular fish, and then the following week, the second week, I was painting them during the daytime lessons and continued in the evening. So biro is one of my favorite things to draw with. I just enjoy the flexibility and the immediacy of the pens, that you can get really light. You can do lots of different marks, from cross hatching to stippling to scribbling, and you can be quite expressive with them. I've loved them since university days, actually, and I still love them today. So I took this painting here. You can see it you can see the tails of the fish just off to the right hand side there, and I started off by drawing a kind of rectangle in which I was going to put all of the fish, and then I worked my way down after I'd done the main larger outlines of the fish. So you can see the outlines just here, and this is me now working back into them using cross hatching and things, and you can see me working at 1000% faster than I would do normally, but you can see me building up lots of layers, particularly there, lots of layers of cross hatching and things to get the tone and shadow in there, and then I build back over that with the little dots and stipples following that. So this the cross hatching ends up getting covered in the end, but I really enjoy working like that. And especially the first fish that I painted around some of the cross hatching and things, so some of the marks came through, but in the end I ended up covering up most of it. But I enjoyed the painting process just as much, and learning about all the details in the fish as we went along. I think the first fish, the one that you can see just at the top there, has a lot of character, and I particularly enjoyed painting that one over the background that I put in later on. So biro is, as I said, a really enjoyable media to work with. Previously, biro has been I've seen artists that use biros, and you can also use color biro pens with each other to do full color biro drawings. But the fineness of the marks that some people get when they use these pens, absolutely stunning to behold. You know, you just would not believe that you could do something like that with a biro. We just hopped ahead slightly there, but you saw immediately the difference between what I'd done previously and how the drawing develops. But you can see that as well, the density of the marks and the layering allows for quite a 3D, three-dimensional and a very effective result. The camera keeps going off during this lesson, which was really annoying, but I managed to fix it for the next one. That's why it keeps going off occasionally. There was a fault with one of the leads. So it's quite nice. You know, you can leave areas out. Now, one of the other things you can do, of course, if you've drawn over an area and you change your mind, you can also just put some white acrylic paint back over the top and continue working. The acrylic paint dries beautifully, nice and hard and very quickly, which means you can continue working with biro back over the top after you've painted. I didn't do that on this drawing because I ran out of time later on after I'd painted it, but I possibly, if I'd had time, I probably probably would have worked back over the top with a biro pen as well. That is after I'd painted it. So down to the bottom, fishy wish now. You can see them all lined up together as in the painting. So my purpose with this piece of work really was just to sort of break out of what we'd been doing before, I suppose, really, and to try out something that I'm familiar with, but also to challenge myself as to what I was going to do with it afterwards. There were some other ideas I had, which was to add some tissue paper and some collage materials back over the top of it as well. As I said, it was the last lesson. This was the penultimate lesson, and then the next week was the very last lesson of the series, so I didn't quite get that far, but there's loads of things you can do. As I did with the turtle before, I added, if you remember, I added some textured wallpapers and things for the coral reef underneath the turtle. So I could have tried out some of these things. So as you can see, we've leapt ahead quite a bit because I had 4 hours of lessons during the day in which I'd painted quite a bit of the rest of the picture. So I started off by adding in some stripes, some strips of colour across the whole of the picture, including the biro. You can see a bit near the blue plate just there. You can see what happened when I did that. You end up with, you know, you can still see all the biro marks that I made previously. Even when you put the acrylic paint over the top. And the way to do that is to water down your paint, and so it becomes a little bit like watercolor, you know, and you can do a wash straight over the top of your biro and you can still see it through, which is perfect, because then of course you can start painting. So during the process of doing this work, I was constantly referring back to the picture that I was working from the other artist, from the artist that made this picture originally. So I was using that as a reference, but in some cases with these fish, I was putting in some of my own marks and ideas as well. So copying another artist's work is a really, really good way to learn new techniques, to learn new approaches and styles and ways of working. All artists have done this previously, so you know, enjoy it, enjoy looking at other people's work and enjoying how they have produced stuff, and then absorb those techniques into your own work as well. And you get a wider vocabulary of ways of using media to create your own work. So a follow-on from copying an artist's work, like I'm doing here, would be to find a photograph or make a photograph of a fish yourself, and then use some of the skills you've learned here alongside some of the others that you might already have to create a new artwork. So this is one of the nice things that I enjoy about painting these, is once you've got the base colours in, you can come back in with the stippling and the mark making and so forth. So particularly the stippling, of course. And as you can see, I decided that after the yellow and white paint had dried, some of the colour had gone and I needed to exaggerate it much further. So I've gone back in once more with this orangey yellow colour to really lift the middle of that fish up out of the picture a little bit more. So this is, I quite enjoy that, because you see the colours, you think that looks nice, and then after a while you think, could do with a bit more, could do with exaggerating or bringing out some of that colour and intensity in smaller places. So the fish eventually starts to take shape and form as you build in all of these tones and all of these colours. And this was certainly the case with the last fish that I did this evening. So I saw lots of yellows and browns in the fish, and there was lots of very interesting greys and things, but not holding myself too closely to the colours I can see in the picture, because I wanted the freedom to be able to try things out. I've built in quite a lot of blues into the picture and some browns on the back, and one thing I quite enjoyed doing, which is what I'm doing now, is painting around the spots on the fish. He's going to be putting in the highlights on his side there, but there's a bit of white I'll just put in as a highlight to bring out the, as somebody said in the class, the shimmering effect of the scales on the side of the body there. And you see me working around it now. I really enjoyed bringing those little bits forward in the picture, and then occasionally just see what happens if you put in a different blue. So a very enjoyable lesson today. I didn't get to do the last couple of fish, but I can leave it as it is, so that one day perhaps I can use this example to show the whole process of what we did in this lesson. So here I decided I wanted to make some of the highlights, some of the white bits on the face jump a bit more. They perhaps jumped a little bit too far at that point, so as you can see, I've put in a little bit of blue over the top of some of those highlights around the eye, and I'm also bringing in some stronger oranges and browns to come closer to those highlights, but then I've toned them back down again. So one thing to remember is, if you do one thing on a painting, you can always change it, especially with these acrylics. You just keep layering the paint on until you get there. Not be afraid to take a few calculated risks as you're working. It's quite wonderful. It's quite, it's an exploration. I was saying to students the other day, as you're working, you're learning about the object. You're looking and observing and finding out new things and making adjustments. And the sheer joy of being in the present and learning about these things is one of the reasons why it's great to paint to make art. Here I was just adding some splatters around the outside with a toothbrush to really just to create a little bit more texture on top of the green that I got in the background. But regardless of the success of this picture or not, I enjoyed it. It was a great lesson.